All right, welcome to another episode of Ethos of a Warrior presented by the Warrior Leader Academy. Today I am joined by Jen Schumacher. She is the Director of Mental Performance for the Academy. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
Jen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a sport and performance psychologist. So essentially what that means is I work on mental performance with different athletes and other high-level performers. My primary role outside of Warrior Leader is I do this type of training with cadets at West Point. I'm the assistant director of our performance psychology program there. And my role at Warrior Leader is to oversee the mental performance program. So essentially providing different trainings and content for individuals that are looking to enhance mental performance and really kind of operate at that edge.
So within mental performance, what sorts of things are we looking at?
Yeah, that's a great question. So mental performance is really the application of skills that we know enhance performance through sport and performance psychology. So for a long, long time, athletes have known the secret to high-level success in a consistent manner stems from working on the mental game of their sport. And so that's a well-established field, but it's only in the last decade or two that we've really started pivoting the skills associated with high-level sports to high-level performance across other domains. Domains like the military, like academics, like the executive sector and business, the performing arts, first responders, and many other performers. And in a sense, we all perform in everyday life. We perform as parents, as friends, as leaders, as workers, as athletes, or fitness weekend warriors. And so essentially what we're doing is taking these skills that we know enhance performance for elite athletes and applying them to our everyday performances. So what I'm referring to here are skills like staying confident under pressure, performing well despite setbacks or adversity, staying focused amidst distractions, managing stress and energy levels amidst a constantly hectic and changing schedule, establishing work-life balance, or my preference for the term work-life integration, and making sure that we can also set realistic but challenging goals and visualize and image success. There's a whole host of other skills that go into it, but that's a little bit of a taste of what we do.
I love that work-life balance. That's always competing like a teeter-totter, right? You can never quite figure out. I love work-life integration because they have to mesh together. So within Warrior Leader, what types of offerings? If I come see Jen Schumacher, Warrior Leader, what are you going to be able to do for me?
So what I can do for you or for any other high performer is essentially help you optimize the way that you're preparing for and executing in your space. So whether that's in the business sector, whether that's as an athlete, whether it's as a student, whether it's returning to the workforce, what we'll do is work on different skills based on your individual needs. So if you need to work on more effective thinking and helpful self-talk strategies to enhance confidence, that's where we'll start. If you need to work on sleep hygiene and managing stress levels and integrating between work, life, and all the other components of what you do, then that's where we'll start. If you need to work on performance anxiety and dealing with the nerves that come along with, say, a test or a big presentation or a big performance, then we'll start there. We'll target those individual needs based on the person coming in after the first initial session. So that really helps us establish the foundation of what do you like when you're at your best and what do you like when you're not at your best, and how can we maybe use these skills to create a program that will enhance your performance and help you be more consistent over time. And with groups, we do a very similar process. We'll talk to the leaders of those groups and look at past experiences. What is it that this team, group, or unit needs? And then how can we teach these skills that will improve the performance of the vast majority with check-ins and one-on-one assistance as needed?
It sounds like it's not just limited to that sports psychology. It's something that can help me out kind of in every facet.
Absolutely, yeah. In part of my role at West Point, I'm working with cadets on performance related to their physical performances, their military performances, and their academic performances. So we see folks come in really to help improve in all three of those categories. And then in my private work and in my background and my training, I'm working with a lot of athletes, a lot of executives, a lot of students trying to maximize their performance on difficult, challenging tests like the GMAT or the bar exam, and then other high-level performers, elite athletes, first responders, special forces in the military.
Sounds like an awesome background. So what got you into the performance field?
So interestingly, it was an attempt to work on my own performances. As a collegiate pool swimmer, I always really struggled with the pressure that comes with being at big meets and competitions. And so in graduate school, I really wanted to explore this and see what was the cause of my underperformance at times. When I discovered the field of applied sports psychology, I really still wanted to test myself and see if I could apply these skills to improve my performance in the swimming world. But I was, of course, out of collegiate eligibility at that point. And so that's when I turned to open water swimming and pursued one of my lifelong dreams to become a channel swimmer. So it was really in that process of applying mental skills to my performances, crossing the Catalina Channel, swimming around the Manhattan Island in New York, and most recently, swimming the English Channel, that have really solidified my understanding of how these skills help us as athletes, but also help us in the real world too.
You swam the English Channel. What was your mindset training going into that? Because that's a pretty big undertaking.
John, I had been working towards that goal really since 2010. So the better part of, well, actually more than a decade. It was supposed to be a 2020 swim, but the world changed. And I had actually had a previous attempt in 2012 that didn't go well. And I ended up in the hospital and, had some issues with essentially pulmonary edema, so swelling of the lungs. It took a long time to recover, but also work back the will to return. And to me, a lot of the mental game was overcoming that incredible setback and dealing with the fear of swimming myself to the hospital again and putting my life in jeopardy and the toll that it takes on family and loved ones. So I actually worked with a coach. I worked with a mental performance coach that does what I do. I like to think that I can apply these skills to myself, but it's so much more helpful to have a coach, as you know. That's a part of why Warrior Leader exists and why we love what we do, is because that external accountability is crucial to success. And my coach really helped me a lot. We worked together on creating different mental strategies to deal with the fear when it inevitably arises, because it will. We worked on strategies to overcome the way I had been thinking in the past that didn't lead to success, and create more effective mental habits and strategies for dealing with thoughts of the past and with thoughts of the future, because thinking about the future and the outcome also wasn't beneficial. And so a lot of the strategies were essentially designed to help me stay in the present moment, to help me cope with adversity, to help me deal with setbacks, and to help me think in a more effective way that ultimately allowed me to get across the channel safely and successfully.
I know a lot of athletes have kind of a mantra or a motto that they kind of repeat themselves. So do you have something that you say to yourself to kind of push through?
So many things. But yeah, as an endurance athlete, one of my favorites, even though it doesn't sound as positive as it could be, is at some point all things end. To me, what that represents is whatever discomfort I'm in right now is not permanent, and it will eventually pass and I'll come out the other side. And then another one that I really, really leaned into a lot this season kind of stems back from my background in 2012. The reason why I ended up with pulmonary edema was from essentially hypothermia and getting too cold. So I did a lot of things to work on my cold water tolerance and put myself in a better position for success. But I knew still at some point I would get cold. The day I swam, the water temperature was 61 degrees, which is fine for a short while. For an 11-hour swim, which is what I ended up doing, it got cold, and it got cold early. And so one of the thoughts that I had pre-prepared and ended up using a lot is, I don't have to know how this ends. I just need to keep putting one arm in front of the other.
I love that. Just like one step at a time, one arm in front of the other. So once you completed it, how did you feel?
It was incredible. I mean, it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, but I think it was made so because of the adversity that I dealt with. There was the failure in 2012. There was the removal of myself from marathon swimming for a couple of years because I just wasn't ready to return, and it took me a while to process that setback. There was of course, COVID, which delayed my 2020 swim for a whole additional year at a time where I was already burned out and dealing with several injuries. And then those injuries, right? I had some shoulder issues. I had a torn meniscus. I had a hip issue. So many different things went into the last couple of years of training, almost a whole decade older than my first attempt. So it was a lot different from the recovery side of things. So when I finally saw the pebbles beneath me in French inshore waters, which mind you was never a certainty because I'd felt really good in 2012 the whole way. I just ended up in the hospital instead of on French shores. And I never knew that I was heading in a bad direction. So I never took that for granted, that there was really no sense of certainty as to what would happen. Even, an hour or two out from the coast of France, I still wasn't certain because we were fighting a really strong tide. So when I finally saw pebbles beneath me, that's essentially the first time that I knew that finishing was inevitable. And it was really that stretch, that last couple hundred meters of swimming where I just slowed down and took it all in and just really wanted to memorize what that feeling was like. The feeling of knowing everything that I'd gone through and overcome to get to this point, but also reflecting on all the amazing people that helped me get there. It was just so powerful and moving.
So now that you've accomplished that task, what's your next adventure?
That's a great question. So I'm actually done marathon swimming for the foreseeable future, and I'm launching into a new sport of CrossFit. So I'm going from like a pretty high level in my old sport to the lowest of the low in this new sport, which has been another mental challenge to start something new from scratch. But I'm really passionate about CrossFit, and I do see a path to really excel as a master's athlete in the sport. And so it's going to be a long journey, but one that I'm really excited about.
So it sounds like you're all about the journey, not necessarily the destination. You're always, hey, what's the next next hill to climb? What's the next challenge to take on?
You have to be, right? I mean, in order to really sustain excellence at a high level over the long term, it's really something that has to be adjusted in our minds. I mean, yes, the actual swim itself, the actual event itself, the promotion, the exam, the new starting role, like all of these things, these culminating experiences are super important. But if we don't love the process, then ultimately that's where it ends. And to me, I never want to stop pushing myself and embracing this journey and this process of getting better.
Sounds like you've adopted a kind of a lifelong pursuit of physical activity and kind of mental challenges.
Yeah, and it's fun to apply that in my professional setting. I love challenging myself intellectually and in a leadership capacity as well. So I know we've focused a lot of time on the sport aspect of it, but I'm a big believer that all the skills I've learned in that space have really only just helped me improve mental skills of performance as a leader and as a mental performance coach.
You talk about having a team, having that support. So what would you say to someone who's kind of, hey, it's all about me. I want to get after it. I don't need any help. I can do it by myself. What would you tell them is the benefit of having an accountability coach?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think sometimes when you're just starting out on this journey and exploring what high performance means to you, maybe going it alone is a good initial step. For example, we have a bunch of guides and content on the site. There's a week-long 7-day mental skills challenge that you can do on your own. And all of that is really helpful in the beginning when you're just starting to figure out what is it that I need and where do I need to develop. But once we kind of get to that point where we've now acquired a couple skills and we've explored this on our own, having someone to keep you accountable, someone to hold up that mirror and show you what they're seeing and guide you on that path to excellence is really the difference maker between performing good and performing great. And I think for most of us, we're here watching this interview, we're here exploring this site because we want to be great at what we do. And we really can't get there without coaches. I mean, the best in the world know this. And that's why we see coaches at high levels of most performance sectors. And so to have something like that for ourselves is nowadays totally doable and something that I think we can't ignore if we really want to pursue excellence.
Coaches have helped me so much throughout my entire career, whether it's a coach, teacher, mentor, like someone to just kind of help guide you along, show you something that you haven't seen. Because that 360, to see yourself is really big.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk to me briefly about this 7-day guide that you've created.
Absolutely. So we're really excited about this resource. It's an introductory resource to help you start developing awareness of different mental skills that you may have, but each day provides you with a bit of structure to learn a little bit about that skill and one specific activity that you can engage in that day to help develop that capacity. And so it starts out with values and awareness, and then it gets into more tangible mental skills like imagery, confidence, energy management, and helps you really structure a routine of working on those different skills. It's a great starting point for someone that has not really explored that area of their performance yet. And even if you have, I just went through the program last week as we were developing it, and I thought it was a really neat way to just get back in touch with some of the basics.
So for those that are listening, you can either send an email to mind@warrior-leader.com for a copy, or you can pull it off of the website, warrior-leader.com. That'll be in the Mind bin. Again, it's an awesome resource. I've looked through it myself. Great 7 days, very guided, simple, easy to use. I love it. So Jen, anything else you want to tell our listeners and viewers before we sign off?
I guess the last thing I'll say is this is for everyone. Whether you're working on mental performance with a coach or on yourself or by yourself, it really isn't just for the elite. I know we've used a lot of examples of elite performers benefiting from mental skills because they do, but I think it's something that can really take you from where you're at, wherever that may be, to the next level, whether that's elite performance or just trying to get back on track with something that you're passionate about. This is an area, much like nutrition and recovery and physical training, that I think is often overlooked, but something that when we address this area, it really helps with all the other elements of that performance because we're able to stay more motivated, stay more energized for everything we need to do, stay committed to those goals. And to me, it's something that I've really benefited from and I'm excited to share with anyone that's interested.
I love that. Staying motivated. That's the piece. What gets you up in the morning? What makes you go to the gym? What makes you do that task? Right? Having that little bit of incentive in your mind kind of threads throughout all of it.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jen, for coming. And as always, go check out warrior-leader.com. Stay hungry, stay true.
Thanks so much for having me, John.